The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and wet fur, a sterile scent that clung to my throat as I clutched Max's leash tighter. My golden retriever whimpered, his tail thumping weakly against the linoleum floor, and I whispered, "You're gonna be okay, buddy," though I wasn't sure I believed it. I'd driven 2 hours to this small-town clinic in upstate New York because the internet swore Dr. Elias Carter was the best, and Max deserved the best. I noticed the limp last week, a subtle hitch in his stride during our morning jogs through Rochester's cobblestone streets. At first, I chalked it up to a sprain, maybe a thorn caught in his paw from our hikes in the Genesee Valley. But when he started refusing his favorite bacon treats, panic settled in my chest like a stone. I'm Lucas Reed, a 28-year-old graphic designer who'd rather sketch logos than face real-world fears, but Max was my anchor. Losing him wasn't an option. The clinic was cozy, with mismatched chairs and a bulletin board plastered with photos of healed pets. A teenage girl with purple hair sat across from me, stroking a tabby cat that hissed at Max. I offered a weak smile, but my focus was on the door labeled Exam Room 1. What if it was cancer? Or something worse? My spiraling thoughts were interrupted when the door swung open, and a man stepped out. Dr. Elias Carter was nothing like I'd pictured. The online reviews mentioned his skill, not his presence. Tall, with warm brown skin and eyes that held a quiet intensity, like he could see through you but chose not to judge. His white coat was slightly wrinkled, and a stethoscope hung loosely around his neck. "Lucas Reed," he called, his voice smooth but firm. I stood, Max's leash slipping in my sweaty palms. "That's me. This is Max." Elias crouched to Max's level, scratching behind his ears with an ease that made my dog's tail wag for the first time in days. "Hey, Max, let's figure out what's going on." He glanced up at me, and for a split second, his gaze lingered, curious, maybe even kind. My stomach did a strange flip, one I hadn't felt since high school, when I'd first realized I wasn't like the other guys chasing cheerleaders. Inside the exam room, Elias moved with practiced precision, checking Max's joints, eyes, and gums. I rambled nervously about Max's symptoms, my voice cracking when I mentioned the bacon treats. Elias listened, jotting notes, his calm presence anchoring the room. "Sounds like you two are close," he said, not looking up. "He's my family," I admitted, my throat tight. "Saved me when I moved here after things fell apart." Elias nodded, like he understood more than I'd said. "Let's run some tests. Blood work, x-rays. We'll get answers." His hand brushed mine as he reached for a clipboard, and the brief contact sent a jolt through me. I pulled back, embarrassed, and focused on Max, who was panting happily under Elias's touch. As we waited for the results, Elias asked about my life, small talk that felt oddly personal. I told him about my freelance design work, my love for hiking, and how Max had been my companion since I left a toxic relationship in Buffalo. I didn't mention that the relationship was with a man, or that coming out to my conservative family had cost me their support. Some truths were too heavy for a vet's office. The test came back clean. "Max has a mild infection in his paw," Elias said, relief softening his features. "Antibiotics and rest, and he'll be chasing squirrels again." I exhaled, the weight lifting, but then Elias added, "You should stick around town for a follow-up in a week, just to be safe." I nodded, though I lived 2 hours away. Something in his tone made me want to agree, to linger in this small town where no one knew my past. As I left, Elias handed me a business card with his cell number scrawled on the back. "Call if Max needs anything," he said, his eyes meeting mine again. "Or if you do." I drove home with Max asleep in the back seat, the card burning a hole in my pocket. I didn't know then that one vet visit would unravel everything I thought I knew about myself. A week later, I was back in Hudson, the quaint town where Elias's clinic sat like a beacon of hope. Max's limp was gone, but I convinced myself he needed that follow-up. Truthfully, I couldn't stop thinking about Elias, his steady hands, his quiet confidence, the way his smile felt like a secret meant just for me. I told myself it was nothing just gratitude for saving Max, but my heart raced as I parked outside the clinic. Hudson was alive with spring energy, farmers markets, rainbow flags on storefronts, and kids chasing kites in the park. I'd grown up in a place where being openly gay was a risk, but here, acceptance seemed woven into the air. It made me feel exposed, like I could finally breathe, but didn't know how. Inside, Elias greeted me with that same warm gaze. "Max looks good," he said, kneeling to check his paw. "You're a good dog, Dad, Lucas." The compliment hit harder than it should have, and I mumbled a thanks, avoiding his eyes. The exam was quick, but Elias suggested I stick around for coffee at a nearby cafe. "Unless you're in a rush to get back to Rochester," he added, a teasing edge to his voice. I wasn't. Max curled up under the cafe table as we talked, the conversation flowing from pets to dreams to the lives we'd left behind. Elias shared that he'd moved to Hudson after a messy breakup in Chicago, seeking a fresh start. "Small towns have their own magic," he said. "They force you to face yourself." I laughed nervously, sipping my latte. "I'm not great at that. Facing myself, I mean." He tilted his head, studying me. "You seem like someone who's been running from something." No judgment, just an observation. His words cut deep, stirring memories of my ex, Caleb, whose charm had masked his control. I'd spent years rebuilding myself after him, hiding my truth to avoid more pain. But Elias's openness disarmed me. I admitted, haltingly, that I was gay but hadn't dated since Caleb, that I was scared to trust again. Elias listened, his expression soft but unflinching. "You don't have to hide here, Lucas. Not with me." His hand rested on the table, inches from mine, and I felt the urge to bridge that gap. I didn't, but the thought lingered. That night, I stayed in a local B&B, unable to drive home. Elias texted me, "Dinner tomorrow? There's a great taco place." I stared at the message, my pulse racing. Was this a date? Did I want it to be? Max nudged my hand, as if urging me to say yes. I typed back, "Sound good." The taco place was a hole in the wall with string lights and a jukebox blaring old rock tunes. Elias looked different out of his white coat, jeans, a fitted tee, his laugh louder than I'd expected. We shared nachos and stories, and I found myself opening up about my art, my fears, even my strained family ties. He talked about his childhood in Atlanta, raised by a single mom who taught him to fight for what mattered. "You ever think about starting over?" he asked, his eyes searching mine. "Not running, but building something new?" I want to say yes, to confess that being around him made me want to try. Instead, I shrugged. "Maybe, but it's hard to let go of the past." He nodded, like he knew the weight of that truth. As we walked back to my car, our shoulders brushed, and neither of us pulled away. The air felt charged, like the moment before a storm. At my car, he paused, his breath visible in the cool night air. "I'm glad you came back, Lucas." "Me too," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he squeezed my shoulder and walked away, leaving me dizzy with possibility. The next day, I extended my stay, blaming Max's follow-up, but knowing it was Elias. We spent the week exploring Hudson, hiking trails, visiting art galleries, laughing over ice cream. Each moment felt like a step towards something bigger, something I wasn't ready to name. But doubt crept in. What if I was reading this wrong? What if I wasn't ready to love again? On my last night, Elias invited me to his place for a home-cooked meal. His apartment was small but warm, filled with books and photos of his travels. Max sprawled on the rug as Elias stirred a pot of chili, humming softly. I watched him, my chest tight, with a feeling I hadn't let myself feel in years. "Lucas," he said, turning to face me, "what are you so afraid of?" The question hung between us, raw and undeniable. I wanted to tell him everything, how Caleb's betrayal had shattered me, how I didn't trust my own heart. But before I could speak, Elias stepped closer, his hand cupping my cheek. "You don't have to answer," he whispered. "Just know you're safe here." And then he kissed me, a soft, tentative kiss that felt like coming home. I kissed him back, my fears melting under the warmth of his touch. The kiss changed everything. For days, I floated, replaying it in my mind. Elias's lips, his steady hands, the way he'd pulled back to check if I was okay. But with the high came the crash. Back in Rochester, reality hit hard. I wasn't out to most of my clients, and my family's rejection still stung. Could I really build something with Elias? Or was I setting myself up for another heartbreak? I threw myself into work, sketching logos until my eyes burned, but Elias's text kept me grounded. "Miss you in Hudson," he'd write, or "Max doing okay." Each message was a lifeline, pulling me back to that kiss. I wanted to see him again, but fear clawed at me. What if he saw the real me, the messy, scared version, and walked away? A week later, Elias called. "There's a Pride Festival in Hudson this weekend. Cool me? Bring Max." His voice was warm, but I hesitated. Pride meant visibility, something I'd avoided since Caleb. He'd always insisted we keep things quiet, and I'd complied, shrinking myself to fit his rules. But Elias wasn't Caleb. I drove to Hudson, Max's head out the window, my heart pounding. The festival was a riot of color. Rainbow flags, glitter-dusted faces, and music pulsing through the streets. Elias found me by a food truck, his smile brighter than the sun. He wore a rainbow pin on his jacket, and when he hugged me, I felt the eyes of strangers. Part of me wanted to pull away, but his hand in mine steadied me. We danced, ate cotton candy, and laughed until my cheeks hurt. For the first time, I felt free, like I could be myself without apology. But as the night wound down, a man approached us, tall, with a familiar smirk. My stomach dropped. It was Caleb. "Lucas," he said, his voice dripping with surprise. "Didn't expect to see you here." Elias stiffened, sensing my tension. I forced a smile, introducing them, but Caleb's eyes lingered on our joined hands. "Moving on, huh?" he said, his tone sharp. "Didn't think you had it in you." The words cut deep, dragging up old wounds. I wanted to shrink, to disappear, but Elias stepped forward. "He's more than you ever gave him credit for," he said, his voice calm but steely. Caleb smirked and walked away, but the encounter left me shaken. That night, at Elias's apartment, I told him about Caleb, how he controlled me, made me feel small, left me when I pushed back. Elias listened, his hand on mine. "You're not that person anymore," he said. "You're stronger than you know." I wanted to believe him, but doubt lingered. Could I really be enough for someone like Elias? The Pride Festival lingered in my mind, a mix of joy and unease. Elias had stood up for me, but Caleb's words echoed, planting seeds of doubt. Was I strong enough to be with someone like Elias? Someone so open, so sure of himself? I spent the next week in Rochester, wrestling with my fears. Max sensed my mood, nudging me with his wet nose, but even he couldn't pull me out of my spiral. Elias called every night, his voice a steady anchor. He shared stories of his work, saving a kitten, comforting a grieving pet owner, and I realized how much I admired him. Not just his kindness, but his courage to live authentically. I wanted that, but it meant facing parts of myself I'd buried. One evening, Elias suggested I visit again. "There's a meteor shower this weekend. We could watch it by the river." The idea was tempting, but it meant committing to this, whatever this was. I agreed, packing a bag with shaking hands. Hudson's riverfront was quiet, the sky a canvas of stars. Elias spread a blanket, and we lay side by side, Max curled between us. The meteors streaked above, fleeting and beautiful, and I felt the weight of my silence. "Elias," I said, my voice trembling, "I'm scared. I want this us, but I don't know if I'm ready." He turned to me, his eyes reflecting the starlight. "You don't have to be ready, Lucas. Just be here, with me." He kissed me, slow and certain, and for the first time, I didn't pull back. I let myself feel it, the hope, the fear, the possibility. The next day, Elias invited me to meet his mom, who was visiting from Atlanta. I panicked, imagining judgment, but she welcomed me with a hug and a plate of cornbread. "You're good for him," she whispered, and I realized Elias had told her about me. It felt like a gift, one I wasn't sure I deserved. As I drove home, I knew I had a choice: retreat to my safe, lonely life, or leap into something real. I chose the leap. Summer faded into fall, and my weekends were spent in Hudson with Elias. We built a rhythm: morning walks with Max, late-night talks, stolen kisses in his clinic's back room. I was falling for him hard, but the closer we got, the louder my fears grew. What if I wasn't enough? What if I failed him, like I'd failed myself with Caleb? One evening, Elias got a call about an emergency case, a dog hit by a car. I watched him work, his hands steady as he stitched wounds, his voice soothing the terrified owner. I admired his strength, but it highlighted my own insecurities. I was still hiding, not fully out, not fully his. That night, I confessed my fears. I'm not like you, Elias. You're so sure. I'm still figuring out who I am. He took my hands, his grip firm. I don't need you to be sure, Lucas. I just need you to be you, the real you. His words broke something open in me. I told him about my family, how they cut me off after I came out, how I'd spent years proving I didn't need them. But I did. I needed connection, love, a place to belong. Elias pulled me close, promising I'd never be alone again. The next challenge came unexpectedly. My biggest client, a Rochester ad agency, invited me to a meeting. They loved my work, but had a conservative streak. When they asked about my personal life, I froze, dodging questions about Elias. Later, I told him, expecting disappointment. Instead, he said, "You don't have to shout it from the rooftops, Lucas. Just don't hide who you are." Not for them. His words stayed with me. The next day, I emailed the agency, casually mentioning my boyfriend. They didn't blink, and I felt a weight lift. I was done hiding. By winter, I'd made a decision. I moved to Hudson. It wasn't just for Elias, though he was a big part of it. It was for me, to live openly, to build a life that felt true. I rented a small apartment near the clinic, and Max adjusted quickly, chasing squirrels along the river. Elias and I grew closer, navigating the messy, beautiful reality of love. We fought sometimes over my stubbornness, his long hours, but we always found our way back. One night, as snow fell outside, he gave me a key to his place. "This is home, if you want it," he said. I did, but the real change came when I got a call from my sister, Mia, who I hadn't spoken to in years. She'd heard I'd moved, that I was happy. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I want to know you again." We met in Hudson, and when she hugged me, tears streaming, I felt a piece of my past heal. The vet visit that started it all, Max's exam, had changed me. It wasn't just about saving my dog. It was about finding Elias, finding myself. I'd spent years running from who I was, but in Hudson with Elias by my side, I learned to stand still, to love, to live. One evening, as we walked Max along the river, Elias stopped, his eyes bright. "I love you, Lucas," he said. No hesitation. I smiled, my heart full. "I love you too." And for the first time, I believed I was enough.